today's speaker. Most of you know him, some for a long time, for decades, and some recently. I know him for decades and to be one of the kindest people I've ever met. He was kind to me, especially when I was a young mother, and he loaned me his pickup truck, and I wrecked it. I wrecked the windshield anyway. I was terrified to tell him he was away on a trip. I was terrified. What am I going to tell him? And he was just so calm and so kind, and just made it as if no big deal. We'll work it out. And we did. More than that, our speaker today comes to you with a great deal of experience. His own personal experience of learning and growing in the light, within the fellowship of the inner light. And oh, aren't we privileged to be a part of that fellowship and to know it? So I'm sure he has some wonderful words to share with us, insights, thoughts, things for us to focus on. Without further ado, David Solomon.
Thank you, Jeanette.
You're welcome.
I'm going to try to do this a little different today. I might make things fall apart. Have you had a chance to smell these wonderful flowers on this rhododendron? I brought it from Washington, and it decided to fully bloom by today. It wasn't planned, but it's actually a bone. Pardon?
Is it not a garden?
It's a gardenia or rhododendron. We're still trying to get a botanist to tell me, because when I obtained it in Washington, it didn't have a tag on it, so we've been trying to figure it out. It lost all its leaves on its trip here, so now it's come back full. It looked dead actually 2 months ago. So you're going to see this talk today. I titled "The Wedding Feast of God." It's actually a talk, the name I borrowed from Paul Solomon. He did in 1976. I rewrote it and filled it with a lot of my own experiences. So it's kind of a mixture of interesting things. And the focus of it was the biblical woman, because we always think of the Bible as a masculine, patriarchal book, but actually it's quite the opposite if you read the stories. Let's first talk about Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day, grandmas, mothers, girls who are not yet mothers. And the Proverbs quote I read this morning from Solomon, although speaking of wives, most women then were wives, except for the concubines, of course. But many mothers today are not wives and are single moms and struggle. And it's for them, especially when I study the near-death studies, it's amazing how often single mothers are brought up and are applauded for the choices of tackling this earth with kids and almost no income or little income and somehow make it. So I applaud all of you. We have a very good friend in Washington. I've watched her over 20 years struggle as a single mom. But before we get into the Bible part of this, I don't know if many of you know the genesis of Mother's Day. It's a U.S. tradition, but it's celebrated all over the world. But it started due to the campaign efforts of Anna Jarvis to celebrate the death of her mother, Anna Reeves Jarvis, who died in 1905. She was an activist who cared for the wounded on both sides of the Civil War. But due to her efforts, Woodrow Wilson in 1914 signed the proclamation creating Mother's Day on the second Sunday of every May. and it's a national holiday for mothers. So I don't know if any of you knew that, but that was an interesting fact. But cool thing about moms is that I would not be here today in Virginia Beach probably without my mother or my sisters being moms being here, because when I had to move because of my health condition in Washington, it was the first place that I thought of, this is home. And I have some flowers for you. Mothers. Mothers typically do not start wars, do they? Mothers touch, embrace, and communicate. They share food, feelings, thoughts, and ideas. They praise each other's accomplishments. They support each other in trouble. They provide sympathy for hurts and advice for problems. They laugh or cry together. They love or quarrel together. They lend things, they give things, they arrange, fundraise for Nepal, our friends in our villages there. When a woman faces any of life's common problems, birth, bereavement, illness, sudden misfortune, mothers come together. It's always the moms that come together. You rarely see guys do this. It's all the mothers coming together. Spiritually, the mother represents the womb where the creation of life occurs. As a human being, a child is born into earth life through a dark birth canal and emerges into the light. Usually now it's in the hospital. But when we die, we leave this world in a similar manner through a dark tunnel and emerge into the light of heaven. It's kind of a being born again type of experience. Pottery images of the Great Mother go far back, tens of thousands of years back into prehistory, and is representative as Mother Earth, the fertility goddess, provider of life, and the personification of nature, just as we have in this beautiful bonsai. We have images of the Great Mother worldwide. We have Isis in Egypt. We have Hathor. You probably can't see it from here. Hathor has an image here. The great goddess Hathor was actually revered on the walls of the Egyptian temples holding a godchild, born of a virgin. And if you notice that Hathor's head is shaped like a uterus. That's the symbol of the triangle if you want to symbolize it. And you have Hathor. And of course, the mother was celebrated in Greece, in India, and China, and in all cultures, major cultures of life, and respected and worshipped. In the Masonic tradition, we have this interesting Masonic pewter water bowl. Do you notice anything interesting about it? About the spout?
Yes.
What does that look like?
Serpent.
A serpent. But just hold on to that thought. And you have chalice, which represents the womb. And then you have the Virgin Mary. So these are all concepts we're going to talk about. Talk about the mother and the wedding feast of God. Today's focus is on the Bible. And so many of us in metaphysics have so much difficulty with it. Some of us won't even read the Old Testament because curse now, kill them, and judgment on them, and it's difficult to read. But it has so much depth and wisdom if you know how to read it. Perhaps we don't have all the keys to what the Hebrews call the gematria, where we assign a number to a letter. We may not have the ptericon, which takes the first and last letter of a Hebrew word and makes another word out of it. Or we don't have the Mazzaroth, which is the Hebrew understanding of astrology, and so much of the Bible is astrology. Astronomical, actually. So, if you don't have all those keys, and most of us don't unless you're living in Israel and studying under a Kabbalistic master, you're going to get a very superficial 20,000-foot rendition of the Bible. But even from a 20,000-foot position, we can get a great story. The Old Testament in particular sometimes records history, like Solomon meeting the Queen of Sheba, the counting of genealogies, or the writing of Psalms, Proverbs, and the prophets. Most of it is 10% history, though, and 90% allegory. We can complain about inaccuracies by origin, and if you know the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Aramaic Bible, or the Latin Vulgate. But actually, when compared with the Dead Sea Scrolls, most of those translations are very accurate. Some paragraphs are left out or added to, but for the most part, they're very accurate. Of course, there are many layers to the Bible. But really, it's about one great love affair with God and you, His bride. You see, even though your body may be a man, your soul is spoken about as being a woman. This is the secret. So to understand the story of the biblical woman, we have to go back a long time, 14 billion years ago. If you can imagine a time before the universe was made, before the Big Bang, there was absolute, perfect stillness. There was no need for change, no need for movement, no need for creation. But there came a moment in that pool of stillness. There came a movement within the heart of God, a stirring we come to know as love. It could easily be called expression, as it was referred to by the Apostle John, but he called it the Word. It was the expression of the heart of God, and within this expression, you and I were created. And apparently, two now, not really. We were one, God and His expression. God immediately loved the expression, and that went out from Himself. And the two became more and more defined, God and His lover. You ever thought of that relationship? That He's your lover. And God decided to make His lover His bride. But God realizes there's not a choice, there's just me. He could have made something very simple and say, well, can you choose this or me? Well, that's an easy choice. So He said, I've got to do something spectacular. I've got to do something really, really that is a viable alternative to me. I've got to create a choice, something that's beautiful, exciting, fun. This will be the gift for my bride. So in one big bang, 14 billion years ago, God said, let there be light. And He created the universe. He really outdid Himself, because all the things He created were reflections of Himself. For there was nothing that existed in the universe but Himself. It was a beautiful gift fit for His bride. And it's described in the book of Job that the sons and daughters of God shouted for joy, and the morning stars sang together. And I'm absolutely certain that God made a star and named it for each of us. It was the most intensely romantic moment you could ever imagine. Creation. As absolutely intense, this intense event unfolded. Stars and galaxies, the suns, even the black holes, spread out through all the known universe and time. I think we sat there and watched and giggled and went, ooh, ah, like watching fireworks. Wow! We were fascinated. For those of us destined for Earth, we had to wait another 10 billion years to go by for our own sun to coalesce from gases and the planets to coalesce from the sun's gases. We observed comets impacting the Earth, adding water and amino acids. Lower life forms developed in the oceans, and then higher life forms, and then we had dinosaurs, mammals, and eventually, just a few million years ago, we had an erect Homo sapiens develop. And we watched all this. So fascinated with creation, the bride sat there wide-eyed at his grandeur. He said, we were excited. God was excited. And he said to the bride, do you like the gift? Do you like what I've created for you? And her eyes showed delight, and she began to amuse herself with the gift. God was perhaps hoping she'd hug him, run and say, I love it. And I love you. And I'm thankful. But when he reached out to her, she said, go away. I'm fascinated with this. She became so fascinated with her gift that she forgot to give her altogether. And so it is said in that moment that the heart of God was broken. So what does the Bible say about this momentous event? It is written in Genesis that after God created Eden, he formed man from the dust of the earth. And soon after, God took a rib from the closest rib closest to his heart, and formed the woman Eve, meaning mother of all living. So God took that rib closest to us, the same story told again. He took that part that was closest to himself and created woman, you. The story goes on to say that a serpent hiding among the branches in the tree of the knowledge of good and evil sat there and tempted Eve to eat of the forbidden fruit. God had warned Adam and Eve, do not touch it or eat the fruit thereof, or you will surely. But the serpent disagreed, you will not die. For God knows that in the day you eat thereof, your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. Eve saw the fruit would make her wise, so she took the fruit thereof and she ate. She gave it to her husband Adam, and he did eat. Apparently, the eating of the fruit made them both aware and ashamed of their nakedness, so they covered themselves with fig leaves and hid from the face of God. How do you do that? God asked them, where are you? As he walked through the cool of the garden. How could omnipotent God not know where they were? But they asked a strange question. And of course, the woman responds, we're here, Lord. And and God says to Adam, what did you do? Well, the woman did beguile me. Of course, blame it on the woman. So what does this all mean? As an allegory, the original Garden of Eden is our heavenly home on the other side of the veil. It's our spiritual home. The serpent represents the tempter, the flesh, which lured us out of our spiritual paradise by experimenting with the animal nature of earth. By touching and tasting this fruit, it says, God gave them animal skins. We put on animal skins and became entrapped in the flesh. And as a result of living in a physical mortal body, we are required to die to leave it. As told in the Garden of Eden, Eve rebelled against the wishes of God, and it's sometimes known as original sin. Perhaps an error, sin meaning to miss the mark. But more importantly, as God's bride, we made a choice to choose the alternative other, a choice to be mortal. But there's another description that God curses even the serpent to crawl on its belly, to eat dust all of its days, and all inhabitants of the earth. And God curses the serpent by cursing its head and cursing her heel. And this has always been a puzzling one for most to understand, but really what it is they touch, the heel and the head touch, and it creates what's called Ouroboros, the everlasting eternal return into mortality. Over 10,000 years ago, prehistoric cultures memorialized this drama of the soul entering and becoming stuck in matter, in mortality, in the stars and constellations in the sky, and some of you astrologers will recognize this. Several star groups describe the story, but two constellations say it best. The constellation Virgo, the virgin woman seen as the lover of God, and Andromeda, the woman in chains, a woman bound by her heart and her desire and her own rebellion, who was later represented in the Bible as Rahab the harlot, and later on Mary Magdalene, the prostitute. Stories told to represent the unfaithful woman who took the alternative lover, the surrogate lover, which she found out was not real at all. She found out that the alternative lover was a sham, and had been a sham from the beginning. As the woman in chains, she was the unfaithful woman, but as Mary Magdalene, she recognizes her lover when she meets Jesus of Nazareth. And in that moment of recognition, the woman in chains becomes his servant, kneels down, washes his feet, and dries them with her hair. After humbling herself, we find her again, the Virgin, Mary. And as the Virgin, she gives birth to that very same expression that came out of the heart of God at the beginning. Just as the constellation Virgo has been here before Christianity, so has the concept of the virgin birth been here before Christianity, and is found throughout the world. The story in the stars continues in the book of Revelation, where we find the Virgin again, but the Virgin is clothed with the sun, with the moon beneath her feet, and a crown of 12 stars, preparing for birth. She was pregnant with a child, the birth of the expression of God. Your soul, this woman, according to Revelation, if we go through all of these steps of the biblical woman, has now completed all 12 expressions, all thousands of the steps of her lessons in her life, all 12 aspects of mortality, and is ready to return to her husband, her lover. There is a cryptic phrase in the book of Revelation that has confounded so many for generations, but it's remarkably simple when the keys are found. It's in Revelation 19 when it speaks of the marriage feast of the Lamb. For the marriage of the Lamb has come, and the bride has made herself ready. It was granted to clothe herself in fine linen, bright and pure, for the fine linen is the righteous deeds of the saints. Blessed are those who are invited to the marriage feast of the Lamb. You and I are the bride. The same woman God has courted throughout all creation. John says that one day we'll be reunited with our lover, and there will be a wedding. And this wedding is called the marriage feast of the Lamb. The groom who's to be married is described in the book of Revelation as the Lamb of God, slain before the foundations of the world. The slain Lamb is God's broken heart. Marriage feast is God being married to the only lover he's ever had since the beginning of time. Now, all this is a divine analogy for which we have no point of reference. But there's never been a deeper hurt in all the universe than a broken heart. It is said in tradition that when Jesus died on the cross, he reflected the perfection of God. And he died, not of his wounds, but of a broken heart. A reflection of the Lamb of God slain before the foundation of the world. You are the bride. Your lover is patiently waiting for you. He really is. He loves you so much and he's that patient. You can do no wrong. He knows you'll learn. And each time you learn, you'll feel God's anticipation. She's getting ready. The wedding feast is about to happen. table was set, guests are invited, and the bridegroom said,